Look, in any journey of building a company, there's going to be a range of challenges that you go through, right? It's kind of this drunken walk that you try and navigate through, and you never really know where you're going to end up one day to the next.
Sound like you speak from experience, though.
Of course, of course, literally and figuratively. And so it's something where inevitably challenges are going to come that you can't predict. And so one thing I think Nick is really good at is flagging those issues in advance and kind of seeing around the corner to understand what is the next challenge that we're going to bump into that we have to start thinking about today so that we can manage it and somewhat mitigate the potential downside of it. And so one in particular I think Nick has been on top of the last couple of years in particular is this migration of the business to the enterprise. In the early days, like with any software company, you basically sell to whoever is willing to buy your product. And you need those customers because they give you feedback, they help make the product better, they actually pay you money. And so it's kind of the proving ground for basically every SaaS company you've ever invested in. But the vast majority of them over time end up migrating to the enterprise. And that's usually what dictates the success or failure of a business. And to Nick's credit, one thing that he did a great job at starting probably a couple of years ago was really charting this course. And it's a very, very difficult process to go through. It typically involves transitioning members of the team. It's really changing the culture of the organization, even the metrics you're using to manage the business. And so we've had tons and tons of discussions about kind of this journey that you guys have been through. And I wouldn't say there is any one kind of cataclysmic moment, but there's a lot of like false starts along the way. There's a lot of kind of pathways you go down that are dead ends. You have to turn back around and you learn from those. And the one thing I think Nick in particular did a great job at was really being open-minded about experimenting and saying, okay, we have to run a couple of different experiments, see what we can learn. Some are going to work, some are not going to work, and let's just learn quickly and iterate. And so a lot of our Sunday night calls or Tuesday night calls or Wednesday morning calls were around these constant experiments that we were doing just to really manage this migration up to the enterprise and ultimately, I think, fulfill the ambitions of the company.
That's right. And I would say that to add to that, I think because we had a frequent dialogue, and I really appreciate that you've spent time with us on a regular basis, having kind of a consistent dialogue, and that we've done that with a lot of the board as well. Ideally, you're not getting to the point where you're just calling and it's telling the board member for the first time about the crisis, so to speak, or the issue at hand, but they have a lot of context around it because we talk about it for a long time. So as an example, as a company grows and moves up market and expands, you're constantly evolving the team. You're adding new people, you're moving things around. And at some point you may have to deal with some tough situations, but if the board has a context around that, because they've seen all the evolution, it's just much easier. So one of the things I really value is I think we talk on a very regular basis. So hopefully you feel the same way I do, which is it never feels like I have to catch you up on 6 months of stuff. Right. It's actually more like, hey, here's something new that just happened last week. Let me keep updating you on it. And then if it does turn into a crisis, which can happen in companies, you've got a lot of context around. I think one thing that I think every day in a company, kind of growing company, there's always some challenge that kind of goes through like a little bit of an ebb and a flow. And so over the years at Gainsight, the early days we had to create market awareness and let people know what customer success is, and then we had to go build a product. Then one of the things we worked on, which I'll highlight, was figuring out how to get customers to really go live with Gainsight and kind of, because they've never deployed anything like this before, and kind of onboarding them in this new technology that they've never experienced. And I know for a while, that was something we were working really hard on, was reducing that time to value with Gainsight. And we're still always trying to make it even better. But I remember there was this high point where we'd sold a number of customers and we're still trying to figure out how to get them live. And there were some challenges just in process and team. Yeah. And I think one of the things that was kind of neat was we tried to really involve the board in that. What I try to do, hopefully we've done as much as possible, is whatever the challenge of the day is, bringing the board into that. Sure. And then actually literally down to the level of letting them meet the customers or meet the employees and hear the firsthand experience.